Now, it's difficult to know what to make of the Children's Aid Society and fostering and courts in this country. On the one hand, there are some really fine, dedicated people working for the organisation. I've met them. But on the other, we hear too many tales, I've covered too many tales of inexperienced and radical CAS workers intervening where they should. Now, it's difficult to know what to make of the Children's Aid Society and fostering and courts in this country. On the one hand, there are some really fine, dedicated people working for the organisation. I've met them. But on the other, we hear too many tales, I've covered too many tales of inexperienced and radical CAS workers intervening where they shouldn't and causing pain just past bearing. I can't be too specific about names in the following case, but you may know what it is. But, well, I assure you that it's genuine and it's far from unique. If it was the only one, I wouldn't even mention it. It concerns a family of 13 children, and I can tell you that such a large number immediately sets off warning bells among the new breed of politically correct social workers. 2 CAS workers arrived at an Ontario home, that's where they live in Ontario, outside of Toronto, while the father was at work. And they expressed concern about one of his daughters who had shown up at school a couple of weeks earlier with a black eye. The girl and her parents explained that it had been due to a fight with a sibling. Okay, no, not good enough. Listen, 9 of the children were taken away and split up amongst 5 different foster families. The youngest, a 2-year-old, was separated from all his brothers and sisters. According to the family, the Children's Aid Society workers told the children that they were there, quote, because we heard such wonderful things about you that we just had to come and meet you. The family also claims that the older children were asked to accompany the younger ones, quote, to help keep them calm, under the impression that they will be allowed to return almost immediately. And they weren't. In fact, the father in question alleges that initially he had problems even communicating with his children, and that the promised telephone calls on the first evening simply didn't come. He further claims that the person taking charge of his 2-year-old would not allow him to speak to the boy at any time. The CAS concerns seem based on this couple's children, and listen to this please, spending too much time in the hospital. The emergency department clocked up a certain number of play-related injuries in what is thought to be too short a time, and they were obliged to call the Children's Aid Society. Now, the parents say, with a total of 13 kids, it's not surprising that they spend a fair amount of time dealing with cuts and bruises. Look at your own situation. Now, with my kids, they play a lot of soccer and sport. Yeah, there were some breaks and things like that. The CAS then claimed that they've also had problems with the cleanliness of the family home, but this seems to be an afterthought. They only entered the home on the premise that the father was abusive, so they're making this up. The children claim that CAS workers gave them written reports about their parents and why it made so much sense for them to be removed from the home. In other words, says the father, the CAS can tell our children whatever they want, but we can't tell them anything. The children were taken to the stores by the Children's Aid Society workers and told that they could buy anything they wanted. Well, perhaps an effort to make them feel better, but if so, more than crass and also far from being good parenting. The parents eventually had some contact with their children when they were united for a church service with 2 CAS workers present, 2. Now, perhaps significantly, both the father and an elder of the church noticed a sudden lack of discipline on the part of the kids. When the 2-year-old began to cry during the service, understandable, his mum naturally left the sanctuary. She was immediately followed by a CAS worker. When this same child was removed from the family again after the evening service, he gripped his dad in an attempt to stay. As he was belted into the car of the social worker, he screamed, "Home, home, home!" The doors were closed and the vehicle drove away. It is an ongoing situation. Abuse is always wrong, of course, but abusers can be parents or they can be annoying and intrusive people only a year or 2 out of university with a degree in social work and an intensely liberal agenda. Pray it never happens to you. The thing is, though, it just might. You heard the monologue, and frankly, if that was a one-off case, I'd say, well, come on. I mean, things go wrong. The system can't be perfect. It's not impeccable. But you hear this time and time and time again. I've had people weeping in front of me, desperately calling me, who am I? But any journalist who might listen to them. There are some terrible cases out there. Yes, we've got to protect kids, but that doesn't mean the rights of a family, of parents, simply evaporate. Vernon Beck, Canada Court Watch, joins us now. To my great shame, I wasn't even aware of your organisation. Forgive me for that. Thank goodness you're there. Do you deal principally or exclusively with cases where children are involved?
Our organization has been, I guess, around 17 years investigating cases involving Children's Aid Society and also the family court system.
Right.
Quite often the issues are the same, mothers and fathers separating and divorcing. Quite often the Children's Aid are brought in.
Okay. Now, I would think for the most part, it's worked out, it's relatively fair, it's relatively just. But it's when it goes wrong, and it goes wrong a fair bit. We mentioned someone, a mutual friend, Dorian Baxter. This happened years ago, but if you read his story, you wouldn't believe it. You think it was a Friday night movie or something.
That is true, and it's funny that you mentioned his name, because even right now, in that case there, the Durham Children's Aid Society was involved.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a case right today where the similar allegations have been made against other people, and they're using very similar tactics and persecuting another family as we speak here today.
Well, in that case, I mean, I haven't addressed it in years, but people were lying on oath. Dorian had a private tape recording of what was going on. I mean, I think a weaker man would have taken his own life the way he was treated.
Over the years that we've been taking calls from people, I would say, yes, I've had suicides as well, people who've taken their lives because of the horrors and the pressures and the unfair and unethical tactics that are used against them by the Children's Aid Societies and their lawyers.
When children are taken out of a home, and I can't imagine anything worse than losing your children, is it because social workers are overreacting, they want to do the right thing and they're not sure, or is there some sort of agenda at play?
Quite often in the family court system, if it's a divorce proceedings, quite often the issue of gender does play a role. I've seen many cases where children are left with abusive mothers.
No, I said agenda. I mean, is there some sort
gender.
of... Yeah, no, I mean, I know, believe me, I know genders at play here, but an agenda. I mean, some of the older social workers I meet in the CAS, they are rock solid. They're worldly. They know when they walk in. They can tell. Some of the younger ones, though, I wouldn't let them walk the dog, let alone go in and try and rescue children.
Yeah, there's no doubt there is an agenda in some cases. Some of these workers don't even have children of their own. They walk into homes and think that they know about how to tell people how to raise their children. And recently, I think if you've seen the story that was in the paper yesterday about the Peel.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Children's Aid. Again, internal memo leak where the Children's Aid is telling its workers not to close the files because they need to keep the caseload high to get funding from the provincial government.
Tell us about the case.
Well, I don't know a lot about it wasn't a particular case. I think it was an internal memo. I only know what I read in the newspaper.
So they wanted cases and files that were closed, nothing more to say. They wanted them kept open so they could get more money from the government.
That is correct. And this case I just described to you a few minutes ago, this appears to be the same thing. I've got a couple where they have had their child for a year. And from our investigation, there is absolutely no reason why that child should be in their care. And the taxpayers of Ontario are paying through the nose to keep these kids in care for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. I try to empathize with viewers, and some of them are probably saying, oh yeah, but you know, there must be something. That would never happen to us.
Generally, from my experience in the 17 years I've been at it, I usually find that there is something that gets them involved.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's something small, sometimes they're legitimate. And I would say that, yes, there are legitimate reasons why Children's Aid does come in. There's no doubt. There are some bad parents out there. But from my experience, I would say that in more than 50% of the cases, Children's Aid agencies, they overreact and they become involved for far too long than is really necessary. And the taxpayers are paying a huge amount of money when you start looking at the cost of workers, and then you start adding on the legal costs, lawyers, and then don't forget there's court time. When you start putting it all together, I estimate that we're wasting $500 million.
$500 million.
Yeah, in the province of Ontario annually.
And destroying families. If your child is taken away for a year, it can be very hard to restore that sort of family structure, and you probably have to move because people would say things. Look, what happens if a neighbor who doesn't like you? I mean, we had him, and this is, irrelevant really, but someone, I don't know, well, I've got an idea who it might be, but someone who doesn't like me. There are people who don't like me. Can you believe that? And he knows where I live. And so local authorities have been called now about 5 times. One guy to front door said, I'm sorry I even knocked on your door. This is obviously a malicious call. There is nothing here. You know, but another one, you know, can I have a look? No, you can't have a look. You can have people who don't know their job properly. They don't register a malicious call. They have to act on orders. If a neighbour, our kids are grown now, but if a neighbour said, I saw him beating his children, I saw her hitting the kid round the head, does that mean the CAS have to actually come and make a visit?
Well, not really. Generally, they do have to do some kind of investigation, but quite often there's a lot of these calls are malicious.
Yeah.
And they come in and just take the position that whatever the accuser said or whatever that call said was true. And they go in and, yes, they'll demand entrance. I've got cases where police, quite often in these cases, the Children's Aid will call the police. You'll have 2 workers, 2 police officers show up at the door, and without a warrant. We have video recordings of them without warrants, forcing their way into homes. I've got one case just this summer where the police forced their way into a home, all caught on video, where they went into a bed, pulled a 15-year-old kid out, and handcuffed him for no other reason other than they had been asked to talk to him.
We're going to have you back on the show. Would you come back? We need to go over this, I think, again and again. Thank you for your time.
Certainly will. Thank you.
I'm coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Let the rain wash away all the pain of yesterday. I know my